Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Timelkov.
Dear audience, welcome on The Leaders Who Care. Today I have the privilege to welcome a great leader and someone who's been deeply passionate about helping others, born by his own journey and necessity through life. Life can be really tough and difficult, but also that difficult moments brings a lot of goodness to us if we can strengthen and overcome those. And we have today Gene, who spent over 20 years in the world of tech, building really high-performing teams, really helping people drive themselves and find a better way through life. Leads a purpose-driven leader and really teaches people how to lead the direction and having the courage to conquer their vision and their ideas. And he's manifesting that through all the work he does, through directly through himself and coaching, but also his team. And Gene, thank you so much for joining us. Jean Bernier, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you very much, Marian, for having me on the show. It's an honor to be part of the excellent guests that you've already had who've talked about leadership and what it means to be a leader who cares.
Would love to hear your definition, Gene, because you've met a lot of people and you've gone through a really tough moments. But tell us more about your own journey and what inspired you to do what you do today.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. You know, one I've actually been kind of like, I would say realizing a little bit more over the last like 4 or 5 months is I'd categorize the last 5 years as a year, a section in my life of experimenting, trying to answer the question, which I thought was, what do I want to do when I grow up? And in that time, I went from co-founding and running an agency called Cheeky Monkey Media for 7+ years, to leaving that, to working with some startups, to seeing some wonderful experiences of what it means to run a company, what it means to fold a company and how to handle running that with teams, to now striking out on my own and realizing what I didn't realize was the question that I was really looking for is, who do I want to be in all this? And how do I bring that out, and just the experience of what that meant to have gone through all that experimenting, trying all these different things, and realizing the what I want to do question was just filling my time and creating an unnecessary pressure upon myself to perform in the hopes of being validated at some point in time, instead of just being able to be super present.
Wow. And tell us more about how do you coach others? What really, because you're looking to find your own, really what sets your heart on fire these days,
Yes.
your fulfillment, your mission. And so far, starting with you first, and then
Yes.
we'll go to the people you help. What gives you fulfillment?
Oh.
What gives you really that deep satisfaction?
You know, honestly, like, you know when you've had like just a deep conversation with somebody and it's just like, you know that you're connected, they understand you, you understand them, and by the end of it you both get to leave with a little bit of an aha moment that you didn't have when you started that. For me, that's why I kind of got into coaching. When I was realizing in the processes of going, what do I want to do with my life? I started asking myself, well, what parts of the things that I have done that I really enjoy? And like, don't get me wrong, I love building tech. Like, it's like followed me from building Lego all the way up to building really incredible products for our clientele over the years. But what I enjoyed the most was like when you sit with that team member, and all of a sudden you ask a question that in a way that they just didn't think about, and you can see the light in their eye just kind of go turn back on. They're like, oh shit, I didn't think about it like that. And they have that moment. You're like, yeah, it was part of that moment for you. And you get to go watch what they do. Is like, for me, getting to watch others have success because of just a question that they were posed in a new way. That was like, even right now, like my heart's like racing. It's just like, I want to go do that more, and I want to help people do that more. And it just comes from this beautiful place of like being with, you know, without an agenda, right? I guess there's a small amount of agendas. Like, we want to get. I selfishly love that feeling. Going, I just watched you have that aha moment, but being able to put that to the side and be like, I'm here because I care about you, because I want to see your integrity and I want to see you play boldly and bravely right now. And being able to stand in that spot, Marion, is like, that's what it means to hold a little bit of space for somebody in my world.
No, that's awesome, really. And in fact, it's part of that. That's why care is so important, because when you care for others, that often may go beyond their self-interest, your personal self-interest, but really just contributing and start giving.
Yeah,
There's a very nice switch that happens when you start giving. Um, when you grow, you feel alive, of course, but when you
yes,
start giving, you feel like 10 times more alive. So it's like you because it assumes it's like a pretty much like a brain correlation saying,
yeah.
if I can give, that
What-
means I have something to offer, and it's an honor that I am able to even give
Yeah.
and make a difference.
Well, I think like those two things, that giving and getting, are like they're the start and the end of the circle. I don't know if you're familiar with a gentleman named Bob Berg. He writes a series called The Go Givers, and he has a whole like 5 step loop about like giving fully. But on the end of that is also being open to the receiving and the getting. But it starts with the giving. It's, I do believe in like what you put out to the universe, you are going to get in return and in spades sometimes, right? Like there's always a multiplier on what you're giving. So that giving comes down to that choice. So making the choice to step into whatever it is, clearly and consciously being like, well, in this instance, I'm going to show up caring, courageous, compassionate, and with integrity. So if you can step, for me, if when every time I step into a situation with, be it on a show like this or with clients, there's always something good that comes out of it, because being driven from those spots, real value can start to happen, and it's it kind of just allows you to be present and open to what it is and where they are, and joining them there, and then seeing what else could be from there.
I have a question, because you
Yeah.
use the phrase "I'm going to show up," and to what extent do you think we could show up, or just make it a lifestyle, for example, just the way we are? And is
Hmm.
there, from your perspective, this is a journey that people need to go through? Because sometimes people may not be there,
Right.
but they may want to get there.
Oh,
And it's a process that is we have to go through, which is working on our character.
yeah.
What is your experience?
Oh, from like being like, oh, I want to be the person that shows up, to being the person that shows up. Oh, that's a great phrased question. I think it's
Actually,
gonna, I, I, I think that first step is just acknowledging that is like where you want to be
yeah,
in, I love that the definition as well of like your character versus your lifestyle. But like, if if who you truly want to be is eventually be that person that can show up, well, the first step is, I guess, kind of asking, flip it around and asking those around you. It's like, how do I show up?
yeah,
That can be a like a
reality
scary
check. Yeah,
question,
you are. Yeah,
right? Is like, if you, whatever group you've got, if you've got a work group, a family group, a friend group, it's like, and if you're questioning, oh, I want to be the person that shows up for others, well, then let's first find out, how is it that you're showing up, and what is that awareness that you're going to have to start to bring to how it is you show up. Because maybe you think, when I'm there, people like me, or maybe there's a bit of a tension, you can just never quite put your finger on what is happening. with how your your body language is, your tonality and your words, like all that makes up how we do show up for others. So ask the question, be like, how do I show up? Then sit down and be prepared for the answers, because they're going to be tough perspectives that you're going to not necessarily see. We all have blind spots, and when we ask the questions like, how am I showing up? You're going to have to start turning around and having a look at those places that you necessarily don't always see in your day to day. I think that's that first step, is like, it always is, are you going to be bold enough to step into that awareness?
Well, and that is an important question to really know how you. But then some people having difficulties of dealing with necessarily if somebody tells them what they feel, or it may come up as not as good as they were hoping.
Yeah.
There's always that fear, right? And and the first reaction is very important to such a moment, because if you react really upsettingly, people may not tell you again because you upset so much that they
Yeah.
just think, why should I go through that feeling moment? But I mean, that comes through. Is it the truth you prefer, or the comfort of your feelings? So it's
Oh man, what a statement. But that's true. And I feel like there's a yes and to that journey. It's like, are you going to be able to sit with yourself and own that reaction? And that reaction's actually more telling than the words that person says to the question, how am I showing up? Is like, if you're wondering, if you're on that path to being someone who can stand there and be present, is like, well, then you need to kind of start to get right and bring the monsters out of the shadows a little bit, and you have to go ask and provoke them to show up internally, right? So like, asking that question, how do I show up? You get an answer that just all sounds just like, you see red, or you're like, this is like an extreme emotion of some kind. It could be anger, it could be confusion, could be whatever it wants to be. And then you're like, oh, I got to sit with this. Okay, this is what's showing up. What is really hiding in here? And as soon as you start to bring that part, the saboteurs out in your life and bring them into the light, that's when you can start to deal with them and put a face to it, put a sound to it, put an experience to it, and be like, oh, I see it. When this shows up, the saboteur happens, and on the front it may feel like I need to protect myself from it. But what you really need to do is start to like meet it face on and go, hey, what are you standing in front of? Because each of those reactions is a message behind another message. So like, what's the experience that emotion is standing in front of, that saboteur is standing in front of, and start to work through it. That you asked a little bit earlier about what it means to do the coaching and stuff. Working with people and helping them stand in that place and explore that as well as part of that lighting up, is like, all of a sudden when someone's just like, I've always reacted in X way, I've always gotten mad, I've always got frustrated, I've always shut down, whatever that I've always got to statement is. By the end of it, when they can start sitting with, I get to hear what it's saying now. I don't always have to respond like this. I may react like this, but I can also take a breath now and choose how I respond and go, oh, okay, this thing's telling me something. Now all of a sudden I can hear the other message. I can hear what's coming in from the response to the question of, how am I showing up? Now I can sit when anybody else is in that storm and recognize what's happening and go, I can be the steady shore that they need right now.
I feel it's a journey, because sometimes we have certain beliefs that if you don't defend yourself, you might lose something, respect, job, whatever, friend. But in actual fact, there's so much power of understanding what it may not be the right perception of you from others, because not always that, but at least that's a perception which you could take it and say, okay, well, that's how I'm showing up from time to time. Doesn't mean it's the truth. Doesn't mean,
Yeah.
but if people feel that way, you got to acknowledge it and say, interesting, why is that? What can I do to change it? Like I use Elon Musk, and he said, don't tell me what it works. That's it's nice to from time to time celebrate, but for him personally, it's like, tell me what doesn't. I don't have time to listen to, and that's why which accelerates a lot of the innovation, the success, and we see the results. I mean, it's not necessarily example for everything, of course, but it's just showing whenever you want to progress of your own character, and until we live, we have a chance to work on our character. That's the beauty. So I think, regardless of what age, and I think you can change it anytime.
I agree with that 100%. There is no age, there's no expiry date on personal progress and exploring who you are and finding new ways of being, right? Like, there's no, these things, these things don't stop learning.
Yeah, and people say I'm too old for this. Well, not really. It's like
the only time I believe that is when we're no longer standing on this ground. It's like, as soon as you've expired from this plane of existence, that's the date you're too old to change. Up until then, you're not too old to change. Like, you can always stand in that space, asking the question of, like, what's going on. And this actually pulls back to a guest I just had on my show, and he talks a lot about doing in the agile world a lot of retrospectives. But this is something you can take into your own personal life as well. I've done with my own clients. Is like, what's going well, what's not going well, or what do you need to stop doing, and what would you like to start doing? Like, asking yourselves that, like, once a week on a Sunday, or whenever you need a little reset. It's like, it doesn't just work with teams, it works on your personal life as well, if you're willing to answer the questions and sit with the questions and find out, what is it that, it's just as important to say, hey, here's the things that are going well, because it's important to celebrate that. I think sometimes we get in that trap of, like, what's not going well. It's really easy to stay there and to focus on, oh, here's all the bad things. Be like, yes, and like, there's no way that it's all bad, and it's no way that it's all good. And it's like, okay, what do you want to do with that place then? What are the things that maybe you're avoiding? What are the things that you need to step into or learn to step into? And knowing that you got to take the steps. It's not jumping into some of this stuff. It's like you said earlier, Marion, it's a journey. It's a journey of this self-discovery, and it doesn't happen in a day. And if you choose to, you can keep doing it all the way to the very end.
What triggered that transition from being a tech leader to more coaching, and what was your motive, or what inspired you to start that journey?
I think it got to the... I think I kept driving myself into this place of burnout, of like chasing what do I want to do, and have had seasons of like great success and great growth, and I've also had seasons of like where it just seems like everything's going backwards, and I wanted to try to figure that out a little bit about myself, going, what is in here, what is part of this cycle, and how do I change it for myself? And so I actually started working with coaches, thinking the work I was going to be doing was going to stay in the tech world. I was going to be a fractional COO, CTO, because that's what I was doing. I was making good money doing it. I had a great lifestyle business. But I wasn't like super excited or happy about any of the work that I was doing. And so I was working with my own coach, and he was hitting me with some real powerful questions and like shaking my world, doing exactly what I paid him to do. And I think it was like on our second or third session, he's just like, you know that you've been doing coaching, right? I'm like, no. That's the thing I'll do like when I'm 60, like when I'm retired and have enough experience, then I can go off and coach. And he kind of laughs and goes, how old do you think I am? And we had a laughing moment. He's just like, dude, you don't need to wait till then. Everything, all the stories that you've shared, all the things that I've light you up. It's not about helping people with processes. It's not about deploying cool tech. Every story that lights you up is when you're helping people. And he challenged me to go off and talk to like my friend group and my network at the time, to say, ask the question, be like, how do I show up? And when I'm working with you in these projects, how do you view me as like in a coaching capacity? And I just got like this overwhelming response of like, oh yeah, this is exactly what you do. You're always helping us. You're always like, you hold space in a conversation in ways that I don't get anywhere else. Your coach is right. You should really be thinking about doing this. And that was like the impetus about I would say 2.5, 3 years ago to start to make that shift of going, oh, well, maybe this isn't a thing that I need to wait until X amount of experience to be able to start to go share it. And maybe this is a place that I could start to go do now. And then I just started doing it and experiencing it. And I shifted a couple of my consulting clients into coaching agreements just to try it on, to shift instead of going, hey, instead of me telling you what to do, why don't we figure out what it is that you actually want to be doing and why you want to be doing it? They're like, yeah, I like that better. I'm like, oh, okay. And it was just like kind of this experience of going into it and having somebody else hold that mirror up for me to force me to have another look at it and step into it.
And you mentioned that you've been going through that period of almost experiencing some difficult burnout moments. And how do you take care of yourself, really, during those moments, not to cross the boundary? And
Yeah.
obviously, the transition of the coaching helped you a lot,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of that burnout, obviously, your difficult moment is born by the mental perception. I think not so much
Yeah.
physical often, but I'm sure it was a lot of pressure for you to figure out what you want to do and what are the things, and just understanding that process of like what do you do to go from a place where you're very close to that or in that to getting out of that.
Mm. It's not the simple answer, but like where I started to change that cycle is when I started going to coaching, and when I start to see a counselor, is like and understanding the benefits of that self-reflection a little bit about not being able to see my own blind spots and sitting with those folks to do that. That was a huge component of that journey. It's like over the last 3 years, I've done a lot of work in that area, and that has helped me in big ways. Now, how do I handle this on a day-to-day basis? Is like, well, like we were talking about earlier before our show started here, is like one of my like long-term goals is like I want to have a dance party on a cruise ship when I turn 100. And I would say over the last 3 years, that has shifted from this being about physical health to now being physical health, mental health, and emotional health. So, like, part of my journey has been doing exercising every day. It's like I need it. I can tell when I don't exercise, like my mental health and everything else does suffer from it. And I've realized how healthy that is and what it means when I sweat and really push my body to find out what it is it can do in that moment. There's a bit of like this like afterglow from it. It's just like my clarity is like the best after exercise. I come up with some of my best ideas after I do that, and being able to put myself and making that important. As well, there's meditation, which I do, try to do 5 to 7 times a week to help keep things in perspective. And actually, one of the things that I've added for myself from a state of like just finding fun in my life again is on my outcome tracker. I track, did I set aside 1 to 3 hours this week just for something that was fun? Not something that was productive, not for something that was like getting something accomplished, but just something that was fun because I deemed it fun. And just by having that permission to myself alone, like this, since I started doing that, like honestly, like my life feels way less pressured.
I have also kind of an opinion sometimes, and I've seen. I know it sounds we do the right things, and by doing the right things, there will be results, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
But when we start doing by a few hours here, a few hours there, am I in check, and all these devices, it's like we're starting to live by the checklist.
yeah,
It's like it could become like a quite a you know yeah, technology driven, instead of actually living it. Everything you
yeah,
do, you it's just it comes that way. Of course, no, you go through the different emotions of the day, but it's imagine if we can do that effortlessly. It's like
yes,
in an integrated way, and really just when you look at people that live over 100 years of age, for example, that's in the blue zones. Find
yeah,
out, of course, what they do because success leaves clues, so we could look at that. Um, and of course, maybe difficult to do this in our society, urbanization. So maybe that may not be that relevant because that's a different lifestyle. Can we simulate that? Can we? So how many people in the urban cities have reached to that stage of 100 years? Maybe that's one more relevant perhaps. But I just feel that yeah, sometimes you sometimes it's quite monotonous in terms of if we just follow this checklist.
yeah. It really, 100%. You said something that really triggered a reminder. Is like, this is, I can either be a human doing or a human being. And I think I'm borrowing that from something Tony Robbins had said years and years ago. But it resonates with me, is like that as well, like adds onto that journey over the last 5 years. Is like, what do I want to be? Well, I want to be that human being, which means I have to be living in this moment and not filling every moment with a checkbox and trying to get something accomplished. Is like, can I slow down? Can I be present in my own life? Can I actually make a little space for fun? And as I've done that exploration, I would say I've realized I think I used to like run myself at like 110% and like jokingly somehow I've like gaslit myself to say, "Oh, that's really like 80%." Only because I could reach like 150 and then spectacularly burn out. But now I think I'm actually living in that space where I'm running at like 80% optimization. Gives me that other 20% for creativity, for that little bit of space for downtime, and for like removing the state of rush. When I think about like what it is, how I've helped myself is like identifying I was rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. There was never a space. And if there was a space left between them, it'd almost be like I would come down hard on myself. Because I think that's like that message, like, for the last 15, 20 years around entrepreneurship. It's just like grind, grind, grind. You can sleep when you're dead. Be like, bullshit. Like this, it's not about that. And the message was wrong. And it's a message that I think, I would say I'm starting to learn, and I'm seeing more people learn about that. Be like, there's a time and a place to work hard. There's no doubt about it. And that the tension and the pressure can be a very healthy thing. But just like that checklist creates this pressure when unchecked, and when you don't go back and reevaluate that, it can do a lot of damage very quickly in a short period of time that has long-term consequences.
And just curious by your the name you put, peeling back the layers.
Yeah.
um, what's the meaning behind that? What do you call it?
Well, kind of two things. So, if you look at the name, someone might look at that going, "Oh, is it spelled wrong?" Well, no, it's actually an acronym for my kids: Presley, Elliot, Alice, and Logan. So we were trying to figure when we were coming up with the name. That's how we were playing around with it, me and my wife. But the other part about it is like it's kind of like a knock on Shrek. So in the movie Shrek, so Shrek and Donkey are talking about what it means to be an ogre, and ogres are like onions, and onions are made with layers, and you peel back to get more of the onion, right? And joking around with my friend Ryan Lancaster, we made that reference and like, but it's so true. Like the work that I do as a coach, is about helping people just pull back one layer at a time. We don't necessarily want to cut through the whole experience of it, but we want to, one layer at a time, sit, experience, peel back the next layer, sit and experience it, because it is a journey, because it is a place of understanding. There's also a place of recovery and healing that comes along with that. And if you go too fast, you're going to cause more damage. You're going to potentially leave some version of scar tissue, and we don't want to do that.
Well, that's thanks for clarifying, because I also thought the same. What's the difference between the peel back? It's, when you talk about the fog as well, um, how to realize that you have come to a place in your life when you are in the fog? What made you realize that? Is it the way you feel, or what is your own experience?
Oh, I'll share my own experience with that. Is like, I think, where I shared, like, I go through these seasons of like great success,
Yeah.
and all that, what all those seasons had in common was like I could clearly see where my North Stars were. Like, what are my objectives? What are my outcomes that I'm working towards? And I always knew the purpose behind each of them. When I had those very clearly defined, the actions kind of like set themselves, and things progressed, and I allowed them to progress. But there was always this point when all those goals would get accomplished, sitting in that space of, and now what? Going, oh well, it will come, right? And you've spent all this time doing some incredible work. You get to this I would get to this plateau area, going, no, it'll come. And then before you know it, it'd been like months or maybe even a year of going, no, it will come. I was still deploying the same amount of energy, but without direction. And that's where that burnout was coming from. It always felt, when I get to that place, like I was in the fog, like I'd come from one place, gotten here, now all of a sudden I don't know where I want to go next. And I can't see where I want to go next, and I can't even see the road behind me or beneath me. But I wasn't stopping. So like now all of a sudden I'm like crashing into things, both physically and mentally and emotionally, not knowing where to go, and just leaving a pile of destruction kind of in that path, trying to run my way out of it, which I came to realize I was just running in circles the entire time, just spending a whole lot of energy going nowhere. To me, that was that definition of the fog, of like, I've done incredible things, not being truly prepared for what comes at the end of that outcome, to be able to say, hey, it got me here, now where do I want to go? Thinking, okay, I can just take I can sit here for a little bit. That's a yes. And I also then need to start to do that work to slow back down, to find my way back through the fog.
Yes, I feel sometimes, Jaden, and we talk about coaching. I in my own experience and journey, of course, we all have that moments of hardship, failure, or difficulties. But this is also the greatest blessing we have, because at the same time, when you look at a beautiful metally, let's say a beautiful sword, for example, that
Yeah.
sword is going through a lot of heat and a lot of banging,
Yes.
really, to get to that beautiful stage. And similar with people, and they need to go through a lot of hardship, because hardship or difficulties produce strong people.
Mm-hmm.
Strong people produce good times, and
Yeah.
but if it's good times and don't have really that difficulties, may produce weak people, and
Yeah.
that can lead to really crisis and problems. But so in a way, because we live in a world that's on the surface, really, we so privileged to have so much, so and in the Western world, obviously now we're encountering challenges that the peace may be threatened, but we're realizing how important it is the peace to be maintained and
Yeah.
to not to escalate. But in reality, we haven't seen that much hardship, and yet the hardship is kind of imposed on our minds, and people are starting to wonder. I'm sorry, it's not like the hardship is often mental because in the Western countries, in Europe and the US, at
Yeah.
least, um, the kind of lack of food and people starving to death is very minimal. There exist such things, but
Yeah.
really, it's if any, it's very minimal. So I feel like a lot of people go into life and they just like going from lamp to post. And I feel like there's a lot of fog everywhere.
Yeah.
And what brings you clarity, basically? What
Mm.
brings you that? What clears everything? Enlightenment. That
Yeah.
really, and not just one part. It just like opens up.
I love your sword metaphor because it's just like, well, how does that sword become that sword? How does it go from a piece of iron to a, a weapon or a tool that can be wildly used? Well, it's got to be forged, and like that word as you're talking about is like, are you willing to? What is your version of being forged? It's like, are you willing to take the heat, to take the resistance to go through to become that next thing? Like, are you willing to go from the piece of iron to the beautiful sword sitting on a shelf somewhere? That piece of iron can also be turned into a ton of other implements.
People may want to become, but they don't have the power to do so. So what gives you power if you want to become that? So,
Having a deep reason behind it, right? Like, it's, you can use something as simple as like the 5 whys. It's like, keep asking yourself why until you get to the actual core of like, well, I want to, I want to have a dance party when I'm 100. Well, why? Well, because I think it would be fun and it's nice to get there. Well, why? Well, I want to be healthy. Well, why? Because I fear being like an old person in a walker who can't enjoy life as I get older. Well, why? I really enjoy living life. Why? Because it's a gift. And that's my opinion of it. Whys, and you can keep going down that path, is like actually sit and chase the whys a little bit with yourself. Sometimes hearing why can be a real defensive causing, why can be a very defensive causing word. But if you are willing to sit and chase the why for a little bit about any of the things that you're working towards, you're going to find a deeper meaning and something that really fuels what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so by getting to that place, at least this is how I've experienced it, is like when I can connect to that deeper meaning, it's like then I'm excited to go do the forging. I'm excited to go do the hard stuff, knowing this isn't as refined as it could be. And without understanding my why and understanding what it is that drives me to go do that, I might not have the right fuel to get to where to be forged in the way that I'm hoping to be one day.
I honestly hear you and just see a lot of. I just feel that um, people often approach life with trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be always that way. Trial
No.
and error, it helps. I think there is a level of system that can be followed that is really exceptional and can help people, but often people neglect or ignore certain parts, especially the spiritual part is
Mm.
ignored. And then they come to a moment where they start meditating. Yeah, but what are you meditating on? Is the question. If you meditate on nothing or just peace of with you, that may come, but you may not have the progress. You may not.
Yeah.
So it's really. And when I look at all the back and because for me results matter. So
Yeah.
typically it's, you can do whatever philosophy, a belief, and so, but after all, it comes down to show me the results.
Yeah.
and the results matter.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like people say life is like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're gonna pick. You never. No, I disagree. Life can be like a box of chocolate with a menu. If
Yeah.
you study and understand the spiritual laws which are written in scripture, which
Yeah.
is what helped me in the most difficult times. There's a reason, and of course, that's why for me personally, if you ask my opinion, what I believe, not holding it to anyone, but what has helped me in the hardest times, and I see it, and I'm having the privilege to speak to a multi-billionaires, I
Mm-hmm.
speak to great leaders, and often at certain moment of life, you can accumulate a lot of wealth or a lot of really great material possessions, success, but that will not give you fulfillment.
No.
It's really it's it's not the mission or assignment of money to give you fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's not the mission or assignment of the house to give you fulfillment. To give you comfort.
Yeah.
It's to give you status. It's to give you knowledge. But all those things that you might accumulate. But at the end of the day, when I look in the deeper, and why I say for me, the greatest care of the world is Jesus, who came here not to take anything for himself, but came to heal, came to lift people, came to resurrect. There was power in that because
Yeah.
the rich and the wealthy and the powerful were interested in him because of the power he has, and they were interested in how can I get that power. But that power was unexplainable because that's what the miracle is, right? Something
Yeah.
that your mind cannot logically explain or process. But also, if you look at his life, and he came to serve others, he
Yeah.
came to be a blessing, and that's what for me has been the greatest. What gives me fulfillment is to live an effective life, serving the purposes of God, and being a blessing to humanity. Because
Mm.
if you're not, and you're not able to
It's
bless others,
beautiful.
it's uh, it's just pointless. An effective life is matters because you don't have to go through the fog all the time. You need
No.
enlightenment. You need, and that's what you need.
Yeah.
You need to know scripture. You need to know those spiritual laws. And we had that naturally many years ago, but we kind of lost it along the way because we got like distracted by all sorts of technology and because the blind cannot guide the blind. If there's a lot of people that don't know where they're heading, they can't
Yeah.
guide us. They guide you, but where?
Yeah.
So I just feel that there's a lot that we really we could go back to our roots, go back to our what made us come to this even stage in the first place, and really take care of each other
Yeah.
and ponder and understand those promises, the spiritual laws that were a gift to us.
Yeah. And I love that. It's like, we are, I really think I agree with you that we are in the service of one another. It's like finding what that gift is and how you're going to serve. It's like pulls it right back to the start of our conversation. It's like, what are you giving?
Exactly. What are you giving? What are
Yeah.
you? What are you? And also, it's like to giving, doing things effortlessly. Right. This is what comes when you have the power because you will not get exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's easy really to do all of this. But what about all those people that are really at a very difficult moment? Okay, we talk from an idealistic point of view.
Yeah.
Maybe we're blessed and to have all this, but what about those that are not? What about those that are really um, barely scraping for survival? And or survival doesn't have to be just material,
Yeah.
physical survival. Maybe what's the point of living this? Well, should I live this life? Should I not?
Mm.
What's one encouragement? What could we give to those people? From your perspective, and of course, I'm happy to share my experience. But how
Yeah.
can we help and lift and inspire them?
It's a powerful question. It feels like a very a responsible question. man, it just pulls me back to another show that I was part of, and we talked about what it means to like remind people that they're cared for, right? At the end of the day, is like it may feel incredibly defeating looking around on like social media or everywhere else, seeing people living what appears to be their best lives. Um, they're probably not, right? Like a lot of people are putting on a show, and it comes down to like not. I wish for people that are in that place of going, that are so low, having been there myself, is like, you don't need to hold yourself up against somebody else's bar. It's like, you've got it in you. You are important. You might not feel it right now, but I'm telling you, you are important. You have a reason for being here. And for myself, what got me out of that dark place when I was in a spot where I thought I didn't want to be here anymore, I realized I needed to start to get out of my comfort zone, and what could my day tomorrow be even just 0.5% better if I just focus on how can I find that 1% to 0.5% better tomorrow. I don't need to think about what it's going to be like in a year. I don't need to think about what it's going to be like in 10 years. When I was there, my focus was tomorrow. I'm going to be here tomorrow. How am I going to make just tomorrow 1% better? That's a real small step. Make it 0.5%. Make it 0.01% better. That was the aha moment. I was like literally sitting in my car after having gone to talk to my doctor when I was in a very depressive state. I still remember it very clearly, just like sitting there. It was like the sun was sun shined in through the window, and it was just like, the reason that you're where you are is you stop doing hard things for yourself. Start being out of your comfort zone daily. And that was like, it was a very clear message to my, and I to this day, I heard it in my voice, but it also wasn't my voice, if that makes sense.
A little bit of inconvenience every day gives you long convenience for the rest of your life.
100%. And it was like, man, the things that I was trying to avoid, thinking, oh, I shouldn't have to do this stuff. Be like, I've come to accept and like welcome those things now. And like, yes, that was a course of like 10 years from that point in that car to our episode today. Is like, and I've had to relearn that and find new ways of getting that, because guess what happens when you go, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone a little bit every day. Your like how far you get in that short period of time is like huge. Then you realize your comfort zone is big, and you got to start doing new things to get out of it.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely and fully behind you on this. And yeah, for me, these the system that I follow that made a profound difference is very much similar to what you just say, everyday improving. But if I add into this, is divided into 5 categories, and start with the spiritual, because the spiritual will give you, will clear the fog, and then you could actually start working with your mental and physical. These are the first: spiritual, mental, physical, which you need all of them in order to be a blessing to others. And then the fourth and the fifth, as you serve others and start giving, you will start receiving, which will take care of your finances. And the last, of course, is your relationships, and make sure you bring all of your destiny helpers. And in order to have all destiny helpers come to you, you need to be one for others. And it's just but you cannot be one if you don't know where you're going, if you're in fog. So you got to work on yourself on those three. And if you do that every day, to your point, little by little, you'll discover. And above all, prayer. Prayer really covers you in the day, because sometimes we get out of home and um, we think we're going to get back home safely, but that's no guarantee.
No.
You just need to say thank you. Prayer, gratitude, and grace.
Yes.
It really help. But what a really great advice, and I hope this is really can help someone out there that is going through this. But above all, now thinking more about the brighter future of if we look at what sets our heart on fire, what excites us for a more brighter, more caring world. What does that look like for you? If there was no limits, if there was really you were in a position to make that difference,
Yes.
your wish for more caring or
Uh, honestly, like to to do more of what we've just done today is like it comes down to like having caring, compassionate, and conversations that are daring to go into the difficult places and ask the questions that make us stop and go, that's a good question. It's like if I could do that every day nonstop, I'd be excited. Like it comes back down to my what I'd love is like
you gotta sleep. Don't do it non-stop.
well, and then sleep and take care of yourself. But like that's important. But like if we're defining like a bucket every day, I get to go do something that I define as work. Is like talking with incredible people and watching them have aha moments, and like I get paid to go talk to people. Come on, like what an incredible life that is that we get to go live. Is like that's that's the life I get to live on my journey to my dance party on February 21st, 2080. Like that's that's the journey.
Gene, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your story and insights, and thank you for helping others as well. And wish you all the best, and really blessings go out to you and your team. And once again, thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you very much for having me on the show today, Marion. It was a great conversation.